Welcome back. You're watching the Urban Debate. Now, the industrial growth numbers for the month of November have just come out and they've slipped to a 17-month low. Just to give you an idea of how bad these numbers were, the numbers were about 8% growth in the month of October. We were expecting a bad month of November. So experts pegged that expectation at about 3.5%. So we were expecting that the growth would drop from 8% to 3.5%. The number that actually did come out was 0.5%. And people are shocked and disappointed at the slump. Industrial production has fallen to 0.5% of that growth as against 8.4% in the month before that. A sharp contraction in manufacturing, particularly consumer and capital goods, has led to that decline, although the decline has been witnessed across all sectors. So you'll know, viewers, that we've been talking about a slowdown. We've been talking about the fact that small manufacturing units have been struggling, that people have been losing their jobs for a while now. I want to understand from our experts if they believe that this is just a one-month thing, or is all of those indications now finally showing up in these lead numbers. And joining me on the show is Akash Jindal. He's a senior economist. He's actually been a constant on the channel. We also have Professor Aman Agarwal. Vaibhav Agarwal from the BJP will join us as well in a bit. Akash Jindal has been a very stable and a very non-partisan voice without taking any sides. He's given us a very clear view this entire time. Akash Jindal, help us understand here at Mirror Now, what does this mean? Is it just a one-month thing? Were you personally disappointed with these numbers, or did you expect it to be this bad?
Yes. Frankly, I have been disappointed with the numbers. The numbers are poor, no two views. So these are poor, these are bad numbers. But yes, the disappointment is a little bit lesser. Why so? Because this was Diwali month. So typically what happens is, in the Diwali month, manufacturing is not that high, but still the numbers are bad. And particularly why I am more concerned, why I am more bothered, is the biggest victim of this, which I have been saying earlier also on your shows, would be the job sector. See, my organization akashjindal.in has been analyzing the Indian economy in depth. We all know agriculture is not giving us new jobs. If we talk about services sector, BPO, IT, there's only a few number of jobs which are getting generated because of the way American economy is structured. America has positioned itself. So basically, for the jobs, there's only one sector which we have to look towards to, that's the manufacturing sector. The number of graduates which we are producing every year, I mean, we are a huge population. Population is increasing, population rather exploding. So I think manufacturing going bad is something which is of concern, and we need to be concerned. So not only this, I mean, we have already done shows on how the small MSME sector is not performing that well, how they need to be supported. But now my bigger concern is the huge manufacturing units, the bigger manufacturing units. Now, when I do some data analysis, it tells me in the past 7 to 8 years, and this 8 years means 4.5 years of NDA plus 3.5 years, 3 years of UPA also, we haven't really put in huge greenfield manufacturing units. That's a huge problem.
Akash Jindal, forgive me
the entire political class is answerable for that. Not only NDA, UPA, but in states we had regional parties also. So I think this data makes me nervous. Plus, the biggest victim is going to be the common man, the person, the fresh graduate from a college, the fresh postgraduate from a university who is looking out for a job. That's going to be the major victim, the major trouble.
Yes. Akash Jindal, I just want to clarify or rebut one of the things you said that it's not very bad because this coming off the festive season of Diwali, there always is a slump, which means that if you compare November to October, October was at 8.1, November is at 0.5. But then if I compare November 2018 to the previous November, which was also coming off a Diwali, it should be similar. But the previous November was 8.5 and this November was 0.5. It's actually worse, Akash Jindal, if we compare it year on year.
No, do you remember? Actually, I don't remember the last year's Diwali. What was last year's Diwali
I'll
date?
tell you.
Was it in
19th of
November or
October.
October?
19th of October was Diwali in 2017, and Diwali in 2018 was a little
That's a
early,
bit of
was
difference.
similarly
So
early
this
October.
year,
Yes, they're both coming off Diwali
so
actually.
this year it's in November. So post Diwali, what happens is demand shrinks because major buying, particularly in northern India, some parts of western India, happens in pre-Diwali days. So some amount we can attribute to it being post-Diwali. But
Well,
again,
I'll
as
grant you
I've
that, but
told,
I'm not
we
really
have to
sure how, because technically the year-on-year comparison should factor
frankly, we
that
have to
the
do
festive
some soul
season in as
searching.
well.
We
All
have to
right,
put
fair
our
enough.
heads together. It is a problem. It is
It
a
is a
real
problem.
problem. We have
Okay.
to accept this.
Professor Aman Agarwal, Director of the Indian Institute of Finance, did you find this number disappointing as well?
Faye, this is disappointing but not a shock. Let's understand the kind of economic scenario we were existing in November, October, November, December and all. The banks had actually been shrunk with funds. The RBI was having a tough with the ministry. They were not releasing funds. There were a large number of banks in PCA. The MSME segment, the large companies were not getting funds to go about producing, whether it is for domestic or for exports. There was a huge impetus because of oil price rise which was taking place, which was raising the cost for production for large number of units. As a result, the companies would tend to not produce because then their cost of production goes up and they will have to do price changes in their products, which they would not like to do too much in a market which is already subdued, where the consumer confidence was low. Now, given some of these factors and the fact that the pollution board was also becoming very strong because of the kind of environmental hazards which we have been facing for the last 6-7 months, the pollution board had become so strong that it would restrict for certain days construction activities, it will restrict manufacturing companies, it will
Only
stop.
in Delhi.
Let us understand, all industries pollute.
No, hang on.
Not only Delhi, it
Professor
is
Aman
in large
Agarwal,
part
that
of the
was only in
country.
and around Delhi. This number reflects all of India.
Yes, as I said, NPA is our biggest issue. The NPA
Yes.
which is being created, the funds not being released to the companies, if they do not have liquidity to go about doing their business, and they have this edge on their head that they have to clear up their NPAs if they want to go forward, otherwise they're going to be shut down or they'll be treated as bankrupt or problems or and so on and so forth. Please understand, there has been a way of business which is being doing on with the banks where there was an ease of doing, comfortableness. You take money, you don't pay back, you get rendering, you keep postponing it time and again. That was not happening, and that is where suddenly this kind of a bump took place. In any case, the festive season had been hit to some extent because of the pollution factor as well, where in large amount of cracker industry is there, which actually produces, and that had to be shut off completely. Now, these are small things which make an instant.
No, I do want to remind you, Aman Agarwal, I don't know, my team will just give me the numbers of a comparison of industries in Delhi versus the rest of the country, and I don't know how much the industries shutdown in the NCR region would have affected the national number. I'm not sure if that's a fair assumption, but we'll pull out that number as well. Vaibhav Agarwal of the BJP just joins us. Akash Jindal and Professor Aman Agarwal talking about the fact that the numbers are numbers of concern. I want you to specifically respond, Vaibhav, to what Akash Jindal pointed out. He said the unfortunate fallout of this number will be on jobs, will be on young people who will come out of vocational training, looking for jobs in factories, which they are not going to get now. Your response to that, please.
Okay. Good evening, Faye, and good to be back with you after a while. Now, I'm not as an expert as Akash ji is, and I would not want to cross him in terms of understanding of economics. I don't want to become an economist on this, but I have a very simple and a citizen-centric question, that when we've consistently grown in terms of the world's fastest economy, then how is jobs not being created or getting impacted at any point in time? If there is a decrease in the growth percentage or in the way it is being calculated, then yes, because any economy cannot grow without the number of hands on the deck. Right, so that's my basic principle on it. But
so is that a question or is that a statement?
When I look at basic numbers, then I have grown. Sorry.
No, you wanted to know how we could have become the fastest growing economy without adding jobs.
If I was to,
I'll allow Akash Jindal to answer that question if you want. I'm sure he can.
My dear friend, how we have grown is how we have grown. Let me answer that question. There's one thing which is growing our economy is our increasing population, and we have a very decent word for that, which is very popular these days: consumption. Our economy, the rate which is growing on the basis of three things: consumption, consumption, consumption. Because we may not be producing things in the factories, but we are producing babies on a regular basis, on a fast basis. So every baby coming into these worlds, he'll be a consumer. So India, I mean, whether you talk about US, Europe, everybody knows us as a great consumption destination. So once we are a great consumption destination, consumption would mean some amount of growth. Consumption means GDP growth.
But jobs,
otherwise, my dear friend, manufacturing had to be on a much, much higher basis, and the jobs would be a victim. Let me tell you, my dear friend, agriculture is not giving jobs. IT, BPO, you know the scenario.
Can I keep a perspective? 1 minute. Okay. Okay. I agree to it. Faye, can I keep a perspective in place? Please.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead, Vaibhav Agarwal.
Thank you. So Akarshji, yeah, it is one thing to say that consumption, and consumption. Hey, what are we consuming? We're consuming roads. Manufacturing of roads has gone up multifold. It has to produce jobs. Without hands on the deck, you can't make roads. Okay, a production of equipment that we are consuming, either it's commodities or it's non-commodity market, which is, and by the way, the IIP that we are referring to is only versus the consumer durables per se. And that's what my knowledge is. I haven't read the report.
No, you haven't obviously read it. One second.
Before coming to the show,
no, Vaibhav Agarwal, stop. I'm going to stop you before you give our audience any more false information. It's not about consumer durables. The IIP data, which is the industrial production data, has dropped to a 17-month low. It's currently at 0.5%. It was at 8% the month before that, and 8.5% year-on-year, November to November. Now, we've seen a drop across the board, and by across the board, we mean industry manufacturing. We've seen mining drop, electricity production has dropped, capital goods production has dropped, infrastructure output has dropped, consumer durables has dropped, consumer non-durables has dropped drastically, primary goods output has dropped, intermediate goods output has dropped, growth for the quarter has dropped. So the drop is across the board. So that's where we are right now, and it is disappointing. And if you're going to tell us that there are hands on the ground, then please explain to me, if we're doing so well, why is it that our entire manufacturing sector has dropped from 8% to less than 1% in the month of November? Because it was the same number that the government was excited about in the previous month.
The projected, same as the projected number was 3.6% for the month of October 2018, where we grew by 8.1%. So, you know, there is a point where we, and growth between April to November 2018 is about 5%. So if you look at the growth pattern, there are bound to be ups and downs, because if we're looking at a continuous growth and a continuous upward trend, right now the situation is where we are recovering from NPAs, where we are recovering from scams, where we are identifying what happened to the money that was taken by Nirav Modi and how is it to be gotten back, where we are recovering from certain banks which are getting highlighted in terms of their scams, in terms of giving loans. Certain National Stock Exchange chairman Ashok Chawla just got prosecuted today. We all know that. So there are bounds to be, there are leaps and there are then those downs which we've seen. But I think if we benchmark overall at around 5-6%, I think it's fairly stable. There is no reason for why we should get alarming on it.
Wow.
And if
Okay.
you
So I
look
just
at
I just
overall
want to point out,
year-on-year growth,
I'm going to
we're
leave this
actually
discussion
growing
here,
to
but
2.5%.
I just want to point out, Vaibhav Agarwal, that it's very convenient when the number comes in at 8% for the entire government machinery to make statements about the fact that this is evidence that India is growing at a great speed. When the same number the next month comes in at 0.5%, you say no need to be alarmed.
No,
It's
I
not a
think,
big deal. There'll be ups and downs. So you have to really choose a side. And if either you want to get excited about these numbers and then we'll get disappointed as well, or we ignore them altogether. I will leave the discussion here. I want to thank Aman Agarwal and Akash Jindal for
I'll
joining
need
us
to
on
look
the
into
show
it
as
deeper,
well.
but I'll be
But
happy to come.
the focus of our discussion also tonight is something that I hope will be